Hello. So, hello everybody. My name is Darko, I come from Immediately. We're a startup. Just some expectations management up front. I'm not a front-end developer, I'm not a mobile developer. I started learning React Native 2 weeks ago when Otto convinced me to do this talk. My role is the CTO in this startup of ours, so I managed to get only a day of coding in a good week. So, just so we don't expect too much. So who are we? We are Immediately. In Slovenia, some of you might know us as Modra Jagoda. Basically, we do a free mobile app meant exclusively, or almost exclusively for doctors. At the beginning, it used to be drug information, but now we're kind of expanding. The content of the application is expanding into some kind of disease classifications and stuff like that, and more and more tools. Tools meaning dosing calculator for specific drugs. Some drugs have to be, the dosages have to be calculated by age, by weight of the child, especially for pediatric population, so for kids. And diagnostic questionnaire, so setting a diagnosis for a certain disease can be done by a simple questionnaire. And there are so many of these diseases, doctors don't know it by heart and use these questionnaires a lot. Currently, we're using Android and iOS native. We do native development for Android and iOS. And we have a web app since 6 months ago or something. So, as I said, these tools are something that is hopefully expanding in the near future in our application because our customers want it, our users, the doctors want it, and it's kind of a good fit. Hopefully it's a good fit for React Native, or what React Native promises. So every calculator, every tool is quite separate from the rest of the application. It does not interact in any way with the rest of the application. As I said, we have a need for making a lot of these tools, and hopefully we should be able to publish these tools on the web as well. So the idea was, let's maybe use React Native and hopefully share much of the code between iOS, Android, and web. And just as an example, this is kind of a simple calculator, so there are some pickers for age, and then some yes/no questions, and then on top you have the result, which is like orange, so some risk for some certain disease or some certain condition is at middle level, and the score is 4. Doctors know what this is, so you shouldn't care too much. But this is what these tools look like, quite simple. So, React Native. Let's first look at the hype. I think this is a slide from React.js Conf was just 2 days ago, so I think this is a slide from there. So I took some of these much hyped statements. So if you've read anything about React Native, you've probably seen this learn once, write anywhere. So it's not write once, run anywhere, which used to be the slogan for Java or something. It's acknowledging that platforms, mobile platforms are different, will be different, will have different capabilities. So, but you should have only one framework in mind. So learn once and then write specific adaptations for different platforms, but hopefully keep most of the code, keep a lot of the code, have a lot of the code shared. So, faster development cycle, this is especially important for iOS development because anyone who's developed on iOS knows that there is always a delay of at least a week or 2 weeks for Apple to confirm, to go, for the application to go through the Apple what's it called, confirmation or check, verification process, whatever. You can do incremental adoption of this technology. So you can take an existing app and replace just one component and use React Native just for this one component, or add a functionality using just this React Native technology and leave the rest as it is. And supposedly it's really a good fit for multi-core CPUs, which all current Androids now run on 4 cores, iPhones run on 2 cores, I think. So supposedly, these are claims, so supposedly there is implicit parallelism. The declarative APIs are really good fit for this multi-core, and the immutability of the immutable nature of React Native is really good for multi-core. So who's currently using it? Facebook, they're the developers of React Native. The maintainers, there's of course an open source community now around it, but most of the effort comes probably from Facebook. So they have 2 of their apps currently. So Groups, Facebook Groups mobile application is a hybrid app. Ad Manager is a pure React Native application, and the Event Dashboard is supposedly very soon moving to React Native. Then there are some media of the better known faces. There are some media companies using it, and the big number they were flaunting in this React.js conf was 250,000 installs of React development tools Chrome plugin. So basically the debugging tool that you need if you want to develop React Native. And there's a showcase which is showing some quite good-looking applications. So yeah, there is really no time for me to explain React, and I'm not all that familiar with React either. As I said, I'm not a front-end developer. We do use React for our front-end, which is, like I said, half a year old. So I know something about it, but I'm not at a very good place to explain React in its entirety, and it would be a waste of time. I mean, it would be a lot of time, not a waste of time. But basically, it's a JS library for building user interfaces. It should be simple and declarative, so you should, from a user's perspective or developer's perspective, you're supposed to just think of re-rendering everything. So whenever you make a change, you just call re-render, and it automatically does it. The React platform, the React framework does it automatically so that it's effective, so it doesn't flicker. So from a developer perspective, you just refresh the whole view, but in reality, it's not the whole view that's refreshed, or the whole screen, but just the parts that are actually different from the previous state. React is all about composable components, so it's about, all you do is just build components. So you build components that you nest within other components, and the flow is one way. So if you imagine a tree, it's always like a top-down flow of information. That's what makes it so simple. That's what makes it declarative. You just declare what you want to show, and these are the claims. So, components are written in JS6. I will show it in the next slide, just what it looks like. Some people are really bothered by it because you mix HTML or something looking like some markup language looking like HTML. In the case of React Native, it's not HTML. You mix it with JS. The idea is to separate concerns, not to separate templates and display logic. So you bundle in one file, you bundle both the display logic and these templates and the styles and everything, but it's, on the other hand, you have one file for one component, and you can easily you can easily assemble these components together. That's the kind of a different approach. And then the two important words are props or properties and state. So properties are something that are always passed top down, so from parent to child. They're passed as attributes. You will see immediately in the code, and they're immutable inside the component. So whatever was passed for each component, whatever was passed from their parent, that's how it should be. And The state is something that changes in reaction to user events and also in reaction to for example, events from the server. So changes from the server. This is probably not visible very well, but the point is just to illustrate this JSX thing. So it's JavaScript code, but then suddenly you open the return and these parentheses, and inside there is suddenly something looking like some markup language looking like HTML, which is a bit confusing for some. It was confusing for me, but you get used to it, is all I can say. So you can see here this component actually returns two nested components. One is tab bar iOS, so a component specific to iOS, and inside the navigator iOS. And this, the thing that's highlighted now is these are props. So as I said, props are passed as attributes. So when you render this navigator component, you give it an initial route, some JavaScript object which has the title React Native. So that this navigator, which is a component that's on top in the mobile app and helps you scroll through different screens in the application, different views in the application. This is the initial route, so the initial view that's opened when the whole length opens. Flux. Flux is the way things are done in React. This is connected to what I was explaining before. So instead of having these, Flux is supposed to be the answer to model view controller. So model view controller, you get a jumble of connections between views and controllers. You can get infinite loops and whatnot. As I said, I'm more relaying the experience of Facebook people, Facebook developers who actually developed this because they had these issues. I'm not a front-end developer, so I cannot really tell you from my own experience that this is a real issue. I hope some of you guys are front-end developers and can feel this pain. But the whole idea is that everything goes, the flow of actions, flow of information, data flows in just one way. So from actions which come either from some external, from the server, or from the server, for example, is always dispatched into the store and then down to the views, and views can also generate actions that dispatched. I wasn't actually using this because my application was actually simpler than this, so I did not have to use this. Okay, Flexbox. So this is now more into how you lay out apps. So Flexbox, some of you, if I'm guessing most of you are web developers, is a web standard in the making or accepted, I'm not quite sure, but the point was to get rid, not to get rid of, but not to rely on the hacky way that CSS is doing layout, which is kind of built, I mean, it's been improved a lot since the early days, but this is a system that's meant just for laying out components. So some very simple rules. You have, you can equally well go lay out elements in vertical or horizontal direction. Then within these, when you select a direction, you can justify content. So to the beginning of the chosen direction. These examples are if you choose, for example, the road direction. So if your main axis is this way, so it's horizontal. So you can justify the content within that. You can justify to push everything to the left, to the right, to the center, to push it as far apart as possible, or to have equal spaces between. And also within that, you can also set how the alignment is done on the vertical, so on the perpendicular axis, so not on the main axis, but on the other axis. As I said, it's completely, it goes the other way as well. So on this perpendicular axis, you can push everything up, everything down, center, stretch it, or use the baseline, which I'm not quite sure what it means, but I guess something to do with text, the size of the text. And also another very used thing is this flex grow, or in short, it's usually the key is usually flex. So you can use this to stretch the elements to the whole width, and but to declare what's the ratio between these elements. So it's kind of like percentages in CSS, I guess. So if it's 1, 1, 1, they should all be equal, and if it's 1, 2, 1, the one middle one should be twice as large. There are some, you can go into more detail about this flex grow. I mean, specify some more detail, but this is the basic thing. And also, inside the elements themselves, you can actually override the containers. This, we were talking about this describing the container, and this is describing the element itself. And within the element, you can actually override the thing before. So it's kind of, again, I don't feel the pain of CSS very much. I have felt it when I was trying to do anything in a few cases, but I feel like it's quite a good way to actually lay out your elements. Okay, then going directly to React Native, then as I said, everything is about components. So, and in React Native you have many components already ready for your consumption. So some basic elements, these are components that are shared, that you use just one component and it works the same way on Android and iOS. So basic things like view, which is like a div, so just for laying out, text images, list view, pickers, switches, so on-off switches, pickers for data, okay, dates are separate, but pickers for like a drop-downs and stuff. Text inputs, map view is actually cross-platform. Navigator to switch between different views in your application. Yeah. And then there are some platform-specific ones, which are always marked as with iOS or Android at the end. So you have some, not sure how many of you are some mobile developers, but some of these are probably something that you would miss. I don't know, for example, segmented control is something that we use in our iOS app, and then in Android we use another thing, but this is something that our iOS developer would probably not like to give up. So you have access to these platform-specific components as well. Okay, and then there is something I will definitely not be able to tell you anything about. There are different ways, and this is really an evolving field, but different ways of organizing the flow of these messages. So Flux is only the beginning, then there's Reflux, Redux, Relay for communicating with the server, with the cloud. So instead, if you feel the pain, if you know, I mean, my application will have to be much larger for me to feel this pain and to understand what these ways of organizing the flow of messages are solving actually. So if you feel that you know that you need to understand, that you want to understand this, I found these code cartoons, which there's a lady who tries to illustrate everything, and might be a good source for you to find out about this. So what does it feel like actually developing for React Native? So you install the React development tools, which is a Chrome plugin. You have to install NPM. The documentation is quite good for getting you started. You basically install NPM, so Node Package Manager. You have to have JavaScript, of course, and Node. You run, basically you go through a very short list of things you have to install, and then you run with npm start. You run a server, development server, which is running your actual JavaScript code, and then you run the simulator, for example, in Xcode, and you immediately have the full JS debugger available. So you can actually, in Chrome itself, the development tools that you know and love, I hope, you can use to debug the application that's currently running in your simulator, in your iOS simulator. So you can break at any point, inspect variables, and do whatever the debuggers usually enable. You can actually save, actually change stuff and save within the debugger itself, and it will be reflected on the file system. So yeah, it's quite nice. it does actually provide quite quick turnaround on fixing stuff, and you can experiment with it. For example, this Flexbox, even though I said it's nice, it's still not completely, you cannot just code it and be completely sure that it will lay out stuff as you want, but you can very quickly experiment with it. And there is even an auto reload, so you can enable auto reload, so whenever you change the file on the disk, the view containing the view on your simulator actually reloads immediately. But some state is lost. So if there are some clicks some taps that you have to do before you reach your whatever you're testing, this is kind of this is one of the things, for example, that the need to tap to get into the state that you want to test is something that these platforms, these ways of organizing solve in a way. But again, too much for right now. Debugging device was also not a big deal. If you're in the same Wi-Fi, you just have to, on iOS, I just have to set the server IP inside the, okay, maybe I missed this, but you always, in both cases, on Android and iOS, you create one activity on Android or a view and a view controller on iOS. So there is a standard native view or activity, which is the same thing. And within that, you load this JavaScript thing, this React view. So within that view or activity, you actually set the source where you're getting this JavaScript from. So yeah, in the case of iOS, you just have to type in the exact IP so that when you push the application on your phone, it knows which server to contact to load the JS during development time. And on Android, it was a little bit more complicated because it always references the bundled file. And yeah, sorry, if you load from the development server, but when you want to deploy, you then just run bundle, and it takes all your JavaScript bundles, minifies it, bundles it into one file, and it's added into the APK or the whatever is the iOS image called. So these are two ways. So in development, you access the server, which is live and which you can change every time, and then when you bundle it, you just push all the JavaScript into the package, the binary package. So yeah, on iOS, you just change this server where you go, and on Android, the reference is always to the bundle, and then within the application, you have to change, okay, now load. You have to load the application, go to the menu, and then type in the IP of the servers. And then it's a bit confusing when it's actually loading from the bundle, which is bundled in the APK, and when it's actually, but I haven't done very much, just, I don't know. Be aware of this. I'm not saying it's complicated. Maybe I just haven't spent enough time with it. Okay, so the end result, what I have achieved is, well, yeah, I didn't mention this. I spent maybe more time than I could have if I just went through tutorials, because my goal was to actually put put this component, this calculator, to actually put it within our app, which is a production app running for a couple of years. We have many tens of thousands of users in 4 countries. So yeah, I actually wanted to play around with the existing code base, with something that's working. It's usually easy to do stuff by tutorial or not, like a vanilla example which does nothing. But I wanted to integrate it into our existing app. So this is our existing app. This test one that you see here is what I've added, just one item in this list of tools, and it takes me to this quite simple looking calculator, which is basically a list of questions, scrollable, feels completely native actually. It's a scrollable list. You can select yes or no. I designed these yes or no buttons myself, because this is what our mobile developers are using right now. So at first I used just the native switches, or just on-off switches, and then I said, okay, let's do it like they do it, and with just some CSS-like properties, you create squares and do some rounded corners and stuff, and switch like this state, colors and content, and the React part of this is every time a user taps taps one of these list items to change from yes to no, the whole thing gets recalculated. So the state gets communicated. So a callback is called to the top level state of the application, and there's a calculate function which does, okay, this question is worth this many points, this question is worth this many points, and it just recalculates the score for the whole, for the state of this. So we have a yes on question 1, 2, 4, and 5. So this means, in this case, it's a very simple calculator. Every question is 1 point, and that's it. So it's quite simple. So yeah, it recalculates. It says 4. It selects a description for this score of 4, and it changes the color to red in this case because 4 is a value that's bad, obviously. But the point, so yeah, the nice thing about it is from a developer perspective, you just recalculate everything, and for the user, it feels like something just magically changes. It does not flicker, it does not, it feels quite native. So this is Android, and the same thing on iOS. Okay, I've named it actually here, Hasblend is called this calculator. So it's the same thing, looks quite the same except for the navigator bar on top. 2 questions two yeses selected, the score is 2. So it looks, and the code for these 2 calculators is exactly the same apart from the detail that there is one offset here. I had to move this score result down because of the detail view, because of the navigator on top, and Android has a back button, so it does not need a navigator. So one code, actually. one code for both platforms. Okay, then some gotchas, which if you start developing, got me in the beginning and were quite confusing. So they're in different samples that you find that you can find on the internet. There are two different syntaxes. So one is the ES6, the new way of declaring stuff, so it looks like a real language, so it's a class that extends some other class and to declare functions. And the older React and React Native tutorials use this syntax, which actually call function, a method to create a class and then pass everything as parameters. All the functions are passed as parameters, as arguments. And there are some subtle, in my opinion, maybe not so subtle, but there are some differences between these two syntax variations, like you have to bind functions manually in this syntax, and you don't do this, but again, I'm out of my depth a bit here. Okay, this was very confusing, but this is again something that ES6 brings, so this is kind of the whole red part is the left side and this is the right. So you import all of this from this, which means that these names get mapped from React Native, and so it's like multiple variable assignment or something like that. This is called structuring in ES6. Spread operator is similarly confusing. So spread operator is with lots of props. This is actually quite, so what it does is just assigns it. You have an object which has values for foo and bar, and it just maps just assigns all the attributes, all the keys of the object it assigns to props in the component. So this above it's something like splat operator in Ruby. I guess some of you guys familiar. Okay, then there is, so yeah, quick release cycle is another one. This I haven't tested, but it should be mentioned because this is one of the one of the more important, should be one of the more important benefits of React Native. So you can actually do very quick release cycles even on iOS. So there is a question on one of these services, on the website of one of the services that offer this, is does Apple permit this? So changing code in deployed applications, supposedly yes, it does. Apple does permit changing JavaScript code. So changing the way the deployed application works, as long as it does not change primary or purpose of the application. So you have a few of these Microsoft Code Push is one of these services that's currently free. It's in beta, but it's production ready, supposedly. And they're not saying if it's going to cost anything after it comes out of beta. So I'm not necessarily recommending you to use it. But basically it's a service. It's a service plus an SDK that you put into your Android or iOS application. And with just one command line call, you can push the new version of this JS, of this React Native part of your application. You just push it to the server, and it gets pushed down to all the deployed applications. So instantly, you have a change of functionality in your deployed applications. They have some kind of rollback for emergency. You cannot do major changes, of course. Whatever touches native code, you cannot do because it's compiled code and cannot be redeployed live. App Hub is a very similar thing. It's iOS only, but then again, you probably only need it for iOS because on Android, the deployment is quite fast anyway. It takes a couple of hours, and iOS it's days, weeks even sometimes. And they do offer, they have a pricing, so they're supposedly a professional service that's going to stay up. I cannot claim that, but at least they have pricing. That's a good sign usually. And I think for $99 a month you get 100K daily average users, so quite a lot, unless you're I don't know, have a big game or something. For our purposes, that would be enough, for example, more than enough. So yeah, but it's similar to Microsoft Code Push. And there's another interesting thing. It's called Exponent XDE. You can develop React Native on iOS without Xcode. You probably have to have it installed on your machine because of all the compilers and stuff, but you don't need to use actually Xcode. The same with Android. You don't need to use Android Studio. So you just run this Exponent XDE, which is kind of like an IDE, but it runs your preferred editor instead of having an editor in itself. Basically, it sets up everything for you. You don't have to think about packaging about this native stuff. You just develop in React Native, and through their own application, you push. So through Exponent, which is an app on your mobile, on iOS and Android, you can actually run. Your purely React Native application, so your JS app. You just code in JS and have an application. I think the idea is to actually make these applications independent. So currently in development mode, you run your app through the Exponent app. On Android, it crashed quite a bit, and their demo apps even didn't work. But on the other hand, they're big committers to React Native, so they look like a serious player. I'm not sure why it was all crashing for me. Maybe it's, I'm not going to say anything, but they look serious enough. Anyway, at least what I can say is that it's probably the easiest way to try React Native. You just download this 8 megabyte app, and you go through a tutorial, a React Native tutorial. You just write some JavaScript, like 2 or 3 JavaScript files, which are not very long, and you actually have a working app on your Android or iOS to see how it all works, how this Flexbox works, how these messages work. Whatever you want to try out, it's probably the easiest way to try React Native. Very low investment. And yeah, they're a company, so it's not an open source project or something, and there's no info on pricing. There's not even about us page, so. Yeah, that's more or less it. I've shared this presentation on Ruby Slack, on Ruby Slack, so these are my sources if anybody needs it. The Pluralsight course is quite okay. This book by O'Reilly, Learning React Native, is quite nice. It goes through you can go through it in a day or two, and it's a very nice book. And actually the official tutorials are quite good. Also for including going from scratch, or for including your React Native application into an existing app. So that's more or less it. We're hiring a Ruby backend developer and marketing lead. Thank you very much. Questions are welcome. I've now noticed that there was not very much code. I'm sorry about that in a way, but it would have to be a much longer presentation and much more structured, and I'd probably not be the right person to do it. So I just wanted maybe to say that if I can do it, you guys can too.
I have a question about, like you said, if you're developing the app for the iOS and the Android platform, like, does this mean you have to have two separate projects with more or less similar code, but like how do you handle the platform differences within the application?
Yeah, there are, it's smart enough to take, you can actually, if you're talking about a pure React Native application, you can probably have one code base, and then some components are just, some components are the same for both platforms, and for the other components you just name so like component.android.js and component.ios.js. And within these two files you can have two different versions if there are some subtle differences. So you have these different versions, and the build process is smart enough to pick up when building the APK or the iOS binary file, it's smart enough to pick up these to pick up its own file. So yeah.
So is there a working web app?
I haven't done. Yeah, that's a good question. Even though the code looks very much like it would be transportable to the web, it's just. So it's two JS files. The code is JS. It's completely runnable in the browser. The elements themselves are view and image and text, which could be very easily translatable to div and span. And I mean, you could just do a search and replace and do div span. Somehow nobody seems to be doing it. Or rather, yesterday I found out about a React Native web component, which I think does that, so compile or transform somehow this React Native code into web code, but I haven't had the time to run it. But I think tomorrow, probably, what I will do is I will take my code, just go search and replace the components into their equivalents on the web, and I think it will probably run on the web as well. But again, mine is quite a simple example, so might not be the strategy to go about with large applications. I'm not sure. Sure.
How difficult is to use custom components? If you run something in native?
Yeah, I didn't mention that. I should have. Definitely one of the big selling points of React Native is, yeah, you can replace just one component, and yes, you can also reach out to the platform below. So you can go bare metal, you can easily expose Objective-C, Swift code, Android, Java code. You can easily expose it. You just have to wrap it in some macro with, say, export this, and you can easily call it from React Native. So if there is specific stuff that you want to call, yes, you can. And I have actually done this. I mentioned that before these yes/no switches, I used the native switch, and then I had some problems. I wanted the whole row to be touchable, and if I touch the whole row, I wanted the switch within it to animate itself to change position. And for this, I lost half a day, and in the end, I kind of managed it. But I did have to actually reach from React Native code down to actual Objective-C or Swift. I'm not sure. Objective-C code probably to call animate or turn this switch and use animation to turn. So yes, you can do that. Definitely.
I guess this is it. So thank you, Darko. Does anyone have a lightning talk they want to give? No one? Okay. Then I'll just like to thank our sponsors, Polygon for hosting us, ŽIVO for streaming us, and TopTal for drinks. If you don't know, you can just go to the bar and order whatever you want. It's covered by TopTal. If you want to know more about TopTal, come to me and I'll explain everything. If anyone wants a JetBrains license for any of their product, but primarily RubyMine, come to me as well. I think I have 4 still because no one wants them. So if anyone wants them, just come to me. And that's it. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you, Darko. Thank you, sponsors. And see you next month. Now go grab a drink.